Hello, YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk metal. Got a fun topic tonight where we're going to look at some Black Sabbath clones. Everybody knows and loves Sabbath. They were a huge influence on lots of heavy bands. But some bands kind of, took the Black Sabbath formula and really ran with it, just kind of made it their own. And we're going to look at a few examples of that tonight. Before we get into that, though, I have a thank you shout out that I need to give to Lance. Lance recently sent me some VCLT, which was really cool of him. A few weeks ago, I did a heavy metallurgy stream with Marty and Tony. Tony's from the Life Eternal channel. Really cool stuff. Huge collection of tons of CDs. And our topic was some of our favorite album characters from throughout heavy metal history. And one that I picked was the Eddie from the Stranger in a Strange Land 12-inch. This came out around the Somewhere in Time, so it's the Cyborg Eddie, but it's the artwork where he's kind of wearing the more cowboy-themed outfit. And I mentioned, it's my favorite Eddie artwork, but I didn't have the single anymore. I got rid of my copy when I sold off most of my Maiden 12-inch singles and EPs long ago. And Lance, sent a copy of the picture disc to me in the mail, which is really cool. I don't think I ever had the picture disc version. So there he is in all his undead, zombified, cybernetic glory. My favorite Eddie, the coolest artwork from him that I've ever come across. So Lance included a nice note just saying, thanks for all the, crazy and quirky entertainment. So Lance, you're welcome for the entertainment, and thank you very, very much for the Eddie picture disc. It's going to go on the shelf back there where I usually have the Anthrax 10-inch clock, and the Anthrax is just going to get moved to another shelf. So Eddie will be looking over my shoulder in the background. But really cool of Lance to just send that out of the blue. Box showed up. I had no idea what it was or who it was from, but when I got to looking, I was like, oh yeah, I don't know Lance. I've actually bought an item or two from Lance over the years, and thought it was really awesome of him to send that my way. All right, now on to tonight's topic. Sometime back, I did a few videos about bands that sound a lot like Queensryche. A lot of them, were smaller acts, never quite broke through, of course, certainly not on the level that Queensryche did. People enjoyed those videos, and one viewer made the comment that I should do the same thing for some other heavy metal bands. Queensryche is hardly the only band that there's ever been a clone of, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. There are some others that I should probably recruit as well. Oh, sorry, let me move this record over here for a second. Get that over to the side. And the next one that came to mind to try this with was Black Sabbath. And there are a ton of bands that have tried to copy that Sabbath formula, some more successfully than others. I'm going to play 3 tonight that I think are pretty good. There's, of course, a lot more than 3. I've already got a part 2 lineup in mind for this. Not only going to talk about the bands, I'm going to play some clips. So rather than just do one giant video on it, we'll chop it up into a couple of parts. The first band, well known to Doom aficionados, this is Sweden's Count Raven. This is their second album, Destruction of the Void, from 1992. Count Raven sound so much like Black Sabbath on this album. It's not even funny. In fact, when I was, previewing some clips, trying to figure out what to play from this earlier, getting set up for the video, my wife literally stuck her head in the door. I was like, I don't recognize that Ozzy song. Which one is it? I had to tell her, that's not Ozzy singing. And she was just like, what? Turns out that, this is, Dan Fandolius is a vocalist here. Christian Linderstrom had been the vocalist in the band previously on their Storm Warning album, but he was moving on by this point. And I sometimes forget that. I tend to think that he was on both these albums, but he was really only on Storm Warning. Dan took over the vocals here and is, still the vocalist. The band is still going. They released an album in 2021. But if you happen to be unfamiliar with them, let's check out a clip here so you can see just how Ozzy-like Dan manages to sound. This is going to be a clip from the track Angel of Death.
The shadow minds, they gather round the pentagram. They always fight the war on our planet grand. Angel of death has come this way and to stay, using its forces and its resources, spread and decay. The knowledge of the facts are kept in dark. A disease you constantly in your body and heart. Panic buttons are pushed around the world. There's no solution, still they pretend like they never heard.
So yeah, there you go. A little bit of Count Raven's Angel of Death from their 1992 album, Destruction of the Void. It's always interesting to me that Count Raven really went for the Black Sabbath influence rather than the Candlemass influence. I mean, it's all doom, it's all good stuff. But yeah, there's no denying that they're really tapping into those Sabbathisms. Yeah, and this was back in 1992 when doom metal was just starting to get a little bit of traction. This is not a first pressing of the disc. I believe it originally came out on Hellhound Records, which I had way back in the day and traded. This is a reissue on Cyclone Empire from several years ago. But yeah, Count Raven, I don't have their entire discography. Couple of albums here and there. They've always been pretty consistent, a very solid doom staple for sure. So if you're in the mood for something Black Sabbathy, but you've just heard the Sabbath albums enough and you want a little different take on it, Count Raven, excellent band to do it with. As I mentioned, Dan is still doing the vocals for them. Christian, of course, moved on to other projects like Lord Vicar. He sang with St. Vitus on the Children of Doom album. So he still had a very solid career in doom metal circles after leaving Count Raven as well. All right. Our second entry for the night is going to be a more recent American band. I believe they're from the San Francisco area. Apologies if I'm slightly off there. This is a band called Orchid. So right away, even the band name is taking you right from a Black Sabbath song. And this band really could almost pass as a Black Sabbath tribute band. A lot of the song titles are subtle plays on names and phrases from Black Sabbath lyrics or song titles. Lots of little parts that they use. You can clearly connect to, like, that's very similar to this bit of, NIB. That's very similar to, this bit from Children of the Grave. And in a way, that sounds like it shouldn't work very well, that it is a little bit too much like a cover band or a tribute band, and that it might come across as very cheesy or very processed. But somehow they really do make it work quite well. What I've got here, the Zodiac Sessions, it includes a lot of their early material. It's got their first album, which was called Capricorn, and then also tracks from an EP called, let's see if I can get it right, Through the Devil's Doorway. They also made a second album after Capricorn, which is pretty good. Capricorn is always the one I gravitated towards the most. Capricorn was one of those mainstay albums in my car CD player. The last car I owned that had a CD player, there were just a handful of CDs, maybe 5 or 6 that I kept in the armrest at all times, because I knew I could probably always be in the mood to listen to one of those 5 or 6 things. Orchid was the doom metal representation with Capricorn. So even though they're kind of a Black Sabbath clone or knockoff, they did it so well that I just played the album to death. So let's play a clip off of Capricorn, and this is going to be from the track called Down into the Earth.
Evil men defeated by mankind.
just a little bit of Orchid Down into the Earth from their 2011 album Capricorn. As I said, the band's done 2 albums, an EP, all really cool stuff in the Black Sabbath vein for sure. And again, it's just so interesting that, yeah, all these parts very much feel like they were almost lifted from Black Sabbath songs, tweaked a little bit, rearranged, and recombined, and yet it works out magnificently. The band seems to know what they're doing and how to do it quite well. The band is still listed as active if you check the mothership over on Metal Archives, but they haven't released anything since 2015, so not sure what's going on there, if their status just hasn't been updated in a long time. If there's a reason they're on a long hiatus, I don't know about, but I'd like to see them, come back around and do another solid offering because I've really enjoyed their stuff to date. If you're looking for the, Black Sabbath kind of tribute bands that's actually doing original material, technically, Orchid's a great one. All right, our third and last entry for the night is an album I talked about a little bit recently in just sort of a collection update, stuff I've stumbled into. I was mainly doing it as a VCLT thank you video, but I wanted to add a little something to pad out the video with. It's like, I got a couple of cool albums lately, and so I talked about this one a bit, a band called Sudden Death, and a lot of people in the comments expressed a lot of curiosity about the album. Like, that looks really awesome. And it really does. It's a killer album cover. And so they were really curious about checking out the band. I hadn't included any sound clips because, like I said, it was mostly, sort of a VCLT and thank you type video. So I figured tonight I'd circle back around and play a little bit of Sudden Death. I won't go back through their full story since I did that in a video just a few weeks ago. You can go back and check it out there. But the bottom line is that this was a Southern Cal band in the early 70s who got a chance to record a demo. I believe it was at Columbia in 1972. The label was looking for their own version of Black Sabbath. A lot of bands were coming in and doing actual studio demos, and Sudden Death was one of the bands that got in there, cut a tape, but it never went anywhere. The tape was lost for a long time. It got reissued, I think, in the mid to late 90s, on like the Rockadelic label. And here in 2023, it's finally gotten another reissue because the one from the 90s has gotten rare and expensive. So yeah, these guys basically were just trying to answer the call to be America's version of Black Sabbath. Let's see how that works out. I'm going to play a clip from my favorite tune on the album, which is called Road Back Home. And here you go, Sudden Death, Road Back Home. All right, so there is a clip of Sudden Death's demo from 1972, Road Back Home. Cool demo tape for sure. The songs vary a lot in structure and style, which was not at all uncommon. Early and mid 70s, bands would often have a few heavy tracks on their album. They might have a couple of bluesy tracks, a ballad, even something that might lean more acoustic or folksy. Bands would not, do an album that was, just heavy songs most of the time, or just this type of song. They always, tended to have a bit of more of a mixed bag. Anyway, a cool artifact, long lost. Very, very awesome to see it reissued. The reissue is on Ancient Greece Records. That's Grease. I believe this is their first release. It's readily available on Discogs for, I think it's around 28, 30 bucks. They have copies on both black and white vinyl that you can check out. I had picked up an extra copy of it, and I've already sent that out to somebody as a little VCLT of my own. So hopefully they're enjoying the album. Hopefully you will as well. So there you have it. We've got 3 bands that are definitely operating in that Black Sabbath style. We have Count and Raven with, a dead ringer Ozzy clone in Dan with the vocals. We've got Orchid taking a lot of cues and titles and snippets and Black Sabbath-like material and making their own tracks out of it. And then we've got Sudden Death, who were, hoping maybe to become America's Black Sabbath and, recording a varied set of demos that, kind of reflects some of the variation you see on those earliest Black Sabbath albums as well. So now it is time. Let's talk metal in the comments down below. What do you think of these 3 bands? Do you like bands when they copy a known band this closely? For some people, that's kind of a big turnoff. They're like, look, if I want to hear Black Sabbath, I'm just going to listen to Black Sabbath. And that's perfectly fine. I get that. For other people, they think it's kind of cool that, these other bands, kind of took that sound and, well, it's very similar. They did make it their own. After all, there's only so much Black Sabbath material out there, and if you've been listening to that for decades, some of it maybe, you get a little tired of, but you want something with that same kind of flavor, and these other bands give you a chance to still enjoy that same musical style, but hear other musicians' take on it, whether it was from back in the day like Sudden Death, or from bands within the past decade, like Orchid. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about these kind of bands, and if you have some particular Black Sabbath sound-alike bands that are personal favorites of yours. Please put them in the comments so that other people can see the names, read your comment, and go check the bands out for themselves. As I mentioned before, I'll do a part 2 to this particular video idea in the near future. It may not be in back-to-back weeks, but there will be some more Black Sabbath sound-alike bands coming to the channel soon. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this time. So, until the next video, everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.